because we're going to look at things to keep in mind when working with children and youth. So I highlighted words because I just wanted you to see those as we went through, so that when you're going through and you're trying to look for something, you can see that word. So, all right. So, please remember and consider how children and youth develop as you put together teachings and activities. That's why we went through all those. That's kind of an overview. You can go online and you can find, I'm going to be teaching 12-year-olds. You can go online and find all kinds of stuff on 12-year-olds. What's to keep in mind about 12-year-olds when you're teaching? So there's scads of stuff now because of the internet. Remember that it doesn't matter what age a person is. Show that you care and they will listen and learn. Third point, observe who your audience is influenced by and consider this in developing a teacher. So if they're influenced by parents, then, and they have their parents or their guardian, then it's, that's great and you can bring that in. But if they're not, if they're more influenced by peers or by teacher, then you have to think about that. I think it's important to kind of know who they trust. Who do they trust? Parents or teachers or peers, or think about what the parents, teachers, or peers believe as well. And you can kind of tell by the kids. You can always ask your students about this. Who's the most trustworthy person in your life? So, one of the most important ways to help children and youth feel safe is to be consistent about your expectations for behavior and how they are to be in their class, and do it. I didn't put that down, but that really needs to be put down. I've already talked about that. Remember, children are more concrete in their learning, and youth begin to understand abstract concepts. I need it. Remember, children believe in absolute truth, right and wrong, and youth begin to believe truth is relative, and there are no absolute truths, because that's our culture now. So you kind of have to have a different way to come in to do that. Use object lessons for any audience. Do you guys know what object lessons are?
Yeah.
What are object lessons?
A couple things she had with the ducks.
Yes, right. But you can do it even a little more differently. Okay. What is this? Attack. Okay. Attack. All right. Tell me about the tack.
Sharp.
It's sharp. Sharp. So what happens when it's sharp?
You can stick it into cork.
You can stick it into cork or the wall if you wanted to do that.
If you're not careful, stick it in yourself.
Or you could stick it in yourself, which would cause damage and pain. Right.
You'll damage yourself if you do that.
So it was created to do something. What was it created to do?
It's created to stick paper and medicine and chloroform.
Yes, it was basically so that you can see that prepare. All right? So it's to put things up so that you can see them. All right? Which brings truth. That in that case, it brings the truth, or brings to light something. Okay? But if it's used in a different way, what happens? If it's on the floor, you step on it, it's painful. Right, okay. So, we all are created with a certain purpose. And sometimes when we move in that purpose, it brings life and it brings truth and it brings good things, right? But if we do things that are not the way that we were created, what happens?
Damage.
It can bring damage.
That was good. Not on the spot.
I did think about it. Thank you. I love doing object lessons. Sometimes it's great to take students outside and let God give them object lessons. So I'll do that I did that once with a little Sunday school group of high school kids. And I was like, do you guys talk to God? And they're like, no. It was a little Baptist church. And I said, oh, well, it's really cool. I said, I'm going to give you 20 minutes and I want you to walk outside in beautiful Montana. And I want you to see things and notice things and ask God to talk to you. And they came back with stories of what God would bring things up and tell them things about themselves and about life. And it was unreal how excited they were about God. It was unreal. All I did was say, God wants to talk to you. And let's go listen to him, which is very contemplative, which was way before I ever did that. But I remember also one time, God speaks to me a lot through object lessons as well, I think. I was leading a team in Japan. I had a team that was they were actually a great team. It was one of my best teams I ever was a part of. But they were having some friction. And I was like, God, what's going on? And we happened to be in the Saitama Prefecture, and there's a big river that runs through that. Have you been there?
No.
Okay. There was a huge river there. And so during quiet time, I went down there and I was talking to the Lord, and I was like, God, why is it like this? And he said, do you see the water running over the rocks? I said, yeah. He goes, well, the rocks are like your team, and they're bumping each other. But the water is making them smooth. It's creating this friction to work out things, their character and so on. He goes, sometimes it's the Holy Spirit that's like the water. It's allowing these things to happen. And I was like, wow. I had this total epiphany from what God was teaching me. So it's really fun. It's kind of a cool adventure, and it's fun to bring it into the class. You can bring in natural objects, you can bring in toys, you can start with a vase, I got a tack off the, you can do whatever. I think it would be good to do an object lesson in your teaching this week. Okay? In fact, I think you should do it. You will do it. Ha ha ha. All right, also stories for every audience, like children, simple morals. I usually collect stories for this reason, to be able to share. There's some really good ones out. Have you heard of Max Lucado? Okay, he's from Florida, isn't he? I think he's in Florida. Anyway, he has a book on different children's stories, and one of them is called starts with the widgets anyway. So it's these wooden people, and they live in a wooden town, and one of the things they do is that when somebody's doing something good, they put stars on them, and they're like, "Yay, you did great! You did great! You did great!" But then somebody fumbles or falls or does something not so good, they put a gray dot on them, so they're being basically rated. Oh, you're doing great. You're not doing great. But what happens is the person that's doing great seems to get more stars, and the people that didn't, get really gray. And so then there was this girl who runs through, and there's this young one, and I can't remember, sorry, I'm totally screwing up the story, but there's one kid, I don't remember his name, do you remember? Diego. Okay, it's Diego. Diego's walking around, he's very gray, and everybody's like, oh, you're so gray, and they keep putting more dots on him, making him even worse, and he's feeling really bad. And then this girl comes skipping by, and she's like, oh, hi, Diego, and I can't remember her name, Sarah. Sarah's skipping by, and he's like, how do you not have any stars? Or somebody was like, wow, you're so happy, and so on. They put a star on her, and it fell off. And then somebody was like, "Oh, you can't have a star," so they put a gray button sticker on her, and it fell off. And they're like, "How did that happen?" And Diego's looking at her, going, "How do you not are you not able to have the sticker stick on you?" She goes, "Oh, that's easy because I go and see Eli." I remembered his name, of course. And they're like, and he's like, "Who's Eli?" "Oh, he's the one who made the widgets. And I go there every day and I talk to him. You should go talk to him." And he was curious. So he went up and went to see Eli. And Eli, he comes in and sees Eli, and Eli's, "Oh, hi, Diego, how's it going?" And just talked about what was going on, and he basically told him, "Well, I really love you, and I like the way you're made, and it doesn't matter what all these people are thinking." And then one of the dots fell off. One of the gray dots fell off. So he left, and then he came back, and it just the dots went down, and he began to not have them stick on either. And basically the story is that we need to go to God to get our worth, so that the accolades and the put-downs don't stick on us, because we know where we're from. It's a great story. So I've used it in teaching a lot. So.
You read it in DTS.
Oh, did you? Yeah. I used to collect stories just for that. So. But it's a great, that's a great story for kids, but it's also for adults. And it's not just stories that would be great for children, but it's good for youth too, because you can talk about what do those stars look like? How do you feel when you get those stars? What does it feel like when you get those gray dots? And talk about peer pressure, because that's what's happening with youth. Now that's a story that Max Lucado wrote, but there's also personal stories, your own personal stories, and I think those are just as important, and because we learn from each other from our own experiences. So, comments, questions? Okay, moving on.
Do you just collect stories? Like I think I asked Phil this too, but do you just collect stories, or do you have just library, or like
I have.
I'm trying to find because I have illustrations. But sometimes it's hard to I'll have an illustration. There's so many times I'm thinking of an illustration and I have a topic and they just don't match up.
Right.
And I'm just going through all my illustrations and I'm trying to remember.
Right.
I literally have a library in our camper, and I'm trying to go through the library, trying to find a story.
Right.
And it's nothing matches up with my topic.
Right.
So do you have
I've had the problem too. I think what I've decided is I'm going to ask the Lord. So, and usually I'll get a story through the Lord, because He knows exactly what they need and what the story entails, and how they'll identify with that story. So I think that's my highest thing. I do have books of stories. I have folders of stories, but I don't use them as much as I used to. The other thing that I've noticed, you've seen me, I sit there and share with you a story. It's like something comes up and the Lord it's like I think He puts it on my brain. Oh, this story would be appropriate. I should do this story. So it's like God's just saying that story, and there are a lot of personal stories. So
That comes with experience.
it does. Yeah.
There are, with collecting stories and with things, as you're getting things, write it down in a system that you can tag it.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
So that if it's a story that's involving kids, put kids as a tag, or
Well, and not just kids, but the topics.
Age group and
Right.
So as many tags that you can think that would apply to that story. So when you're trying to search your collection,
Yeah.
those things can pop up. So
Yeah.
it's important. Having the stories is one thing, but being able to find them and access them, that's the
Big one.
big one. So if you can, make sure that you get them and then you tag them.
Yeah,
Also bringing it up, having a notebook, Lord, come up with an illustration. I have it on Sunday.
there's so many times where like the Lord will just reveal that to you. Generally, for
Right.
us, it's like going through Target. It's just like, oh, yeah, that was a great example. Like watching
Yes.
a kid have a tantrum
Yes.
that he
Yes,
can't
just
stand
becoming
taught.
aware around you.
And
Yeah,
it was like, oh, he doesn't understand.
right.
And using that as an example of like our perception of God's plans. And then just writing that down and then being able to put it in a system like that, but just not letting those moments pass by, really
Yes.
noticed are helpful.
Yep.
If you are taking notes as it has happened, to remind you
Mm-hmm.
of that, because a lot of times for me, like, oh, that's great, I'll remember that. That was so good, I will remember.
I know. I cannot
5
forget
minutes
it.
later, it's like, okay, what was that all about?
Totally.
So, not to wait. If you
Yeah.
find something like, oh, that's great, I'm gonna use that.
Yeah.
Make sure that you write it while you're thinking about it.
Or
In as
record
many
it.
Or record it, and in as many details as possible.
Yes.
There was one guy that said, I don't remember the words or exactly, but he said he was dreaming, he woke up and he was like, that was the most amazing dream. I'm gonna use that as an example. And he wrote a couple of keywords down, 5 keywords, thinking, I'm gonna remember. Went back to sleep, came back up, woke back up the next morning and he goes, I know I woke up, I know that the dream was amazing, but these keywords make no sense to me whatsoever.
Yep.
So as detailed as you can be in your
Yep.
note-taking.
Yep. The other thing is actually talk to people and say, you know what, I'm getting ready to preach or teach, and this is the topic, and I'm really having a hard time with the story. What do you think? What comes to your mind when you think of this? And you've got people here you can talk with. So
Make a note of the source.
yes, always. Like I talked about Max Lucado. So yes, absolutely. Good job.